Why is he frightened? Because he suffers from a deep sense of impotence. Why is this so? Because he has never dissolved the ties to mother and is emotionally still a little child. This sequence is, of course, not the only possible one. Each of these answers is, quote, true. The difference between them lies in that they refer to ever deeper and usually less conscious levels of experience. The deeper the level to which the answer refers, the more relevant it is for the understanding of his behavior. Not just for the understanding of his motivations, but for recognizing the behavior in every detail. In a case like this, for instance, a sensitive observer will see the expression of frightened helplessness in his face rather than only the rage. In another case, a man's obvious behavior may be the same, but the sensitive awareness of his face will show hardness and intense destructiveness. His angry behavior is only the controlled expression of destructive impulses. The two similar behaviors are in fact quite dissimilar, and aside from the intuitive sensitivity, the scientific way of understanding the differences requires the understanding of motivation, as in of the two respective character structures. I have not given the customary answer, quote, he is angry because he has been or feels insulted. Such an explanation puts all the emphasis on the triggering stimulus but ignores that the stimulus's power to stimulate depends also on the character structure of the stimulated person. A group of people confronted with the same stimulus will react differently to it according to their characters. A may be attracted to the stimulus. A may be attracted to the stimulus. B repulsed. C frightened. D will ignore it. Buss is, of course, perfectly right in stating that intent is a private event that may or may not be capable of verbalization, but this is precisely the dilemma of behaviorism, because it has no method for examining unverbalized data. It has to restrict its investigations to those data that it can handle, which are mutually too crude to lend themselves to subtle theoretical analysis. Well, so, on psychological experiments, if a psychologist sets himself the task of understanding human behavior, he must devise methods of investigation which are adequate to the study of human beings in vivo while practically all behavioristic studies are done in vitro, not in the equivalent sense, namely that the subject is observed under controlled, artificially arranged conditions, not in the real process of living. Psychology seems to have wanted to attain respectability by by imitating the method of the natural sciences, albeit those of 50 years ago, and not in terms of scientific method current in the most advanced natural, often covered up by the impressive-looking mathematical formulations which are not germane to the data and do not add anything to their value. To devise a method for the observation and analysis of human behavior outside of the laboratory is a difficult undertaking, but it is a necessary condition for the understanding of man. There are, in principle, two fields of observation for the study of man. One, the direct and detailed observation of another person is one method. The most elaborate and fruitful situation is the kind of psychoanalytic situation, the quote, psychoanalytic laboratory, unquote, as Freud devised it. It permits the expression of the patient's unconscious impulses and the examination of their connection with his overt, quote, normal, unquote, and, quote, neurotic, unquote, behavior. Note, I put two terms in quotation marks because they are often loosely used and sometimes have become identical, socially adapted, and non-adapted, respectively. So, normal and neurotic are the two words. A less intensive, yet also quite fruitful in an interview, or better, a series of interviews which, if possible, should also include the study of some dreams and certain projective tests, but one should not underestimate the knowledge in depth which a skilled observer can obtain simply by observing a person minutely for a while, including, of course, his gestures, voice, posture, facial expression, hands, etc. Even without personal knowledge, diaries, letters, and detailed history of a person, this kind of observation can be an important source for the understanding in depth of his character. 2. Another method for the study of man in vivo is to transform given situations in life into a, quote, natural laboratory rather than to bring life into the psychological laboratory, instead of constructing an artificial social situation as the experimenter does in his psychological laboratory. One studies the experiments life itself offers. One chooses given social situations which are comparable and transforms them into the equivalent of experiments by the method of studying them, by keeping some factors constant, others variable. This natural laboratory also permits the testing of various hypotheses. There are many comparable situations, and one can test whether one hypothesis stands up in all situations, and if not, whether the exceptions can be sufficiently explained without changing the hypothesis. One of the simplest forms of such, quote, natural experiments, unquote, are enquetes, using long and open-ended questionnaires and or personal interviews with selected representatives from certain groups such as age or occupational groups, prisoners, hospital inmates, and so forth. The use of the conventional battery of psychological tests is, in my opinion, not sufficient for the understanding of the deeper layers of the character.